we are, guys.
Here we are.
What's up, LP? What's up, Maddy?
Hi, how you doing? So happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, Femhouse fam. Welcome back to Backstage Pass. We're so excited to have our guest today, Maddy Salvage. She is a DJ, a label executive, an awesome person, a producer, everything that you want to be when you grow up. She's a great friend to us, a really great supporter of the community, a champion of the community. Maddy Salvage.
Hi.
Wow, what a legend.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a really wonderful intro. But no, I'm very happy to be part of this amazing platform. I love it. I love what it's about. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I mean, listen, sort of like when we were putting this thing together a couple years ago, we had a short list of folks that we sort of aspired to encompass their essence, and you were definitely one of them. So you're a great inspiration to everything that we do here. So, we're grateful to you as well.
I second that.
Thank you for your valuable
delay.
Thank you for your input.
So I have a couple of questions that I always like to start with when I'm talking to someone. What'd you want to be when you grew up?
You know what? I was one of those annoying kids that sort of had quite a strong sense of direction from an early age. I'm from Brighton originally in the UK, and it's quite a sort of vibrant culture scene there. It's obviously, it has its kind of heart and its history in club music. So I was kind of, when I was about 16, 17, going into record shops and buying drum and bass vinyl, pretending it was for my male friends or brother, because I was so intimidated by the very nerdy record store owners at the time, which is a little sad, and we'll get onto that later. But no, I got into club culture quite early. I actually went and studied history at university. My parents, who didn't come from much money, sort of pushed me down quite an academic route because I did well at school. So I was constantly interning and kind of doing things around music, but it meant quite a lot to me that I had that sort of solid education at the same time. And I loved academia as well. So it was a bit of a mix, but I started interning around 16, 17 at labels. So I was fairly proactive, definitely had my fair share of years of partying and ignoring any sense of the future, but who hasn't, So yeah, I was around music a lot. I was fortunate in that sense. Both my parents, my dad's an actor and a writer, and they had a lot of music and cultural and instruments at home. So it was always a big passion from the very early days.
So typically there's a second part to that question, because people are always like, I wanted to be a zoologist. So I always ask, like, any regrets, but like clearly not.
I think there were. I think, one of the areas that I'm super happy that I listened to my family and contemporaries about was having more of kind of a stability. And I was never one of the kids that had the fortune and the luck to be able to go and sort of try different things out and try and fail. I had a job from when I was 15. I was waitressing, I was working in bars, I was doing all sorts of things, washing up, whatever, you name it. So on the one hand, I would have liked more of the freedom to maybe experiment more of the artistry side, or doing, maybe working in film. I don't know. There was just not that many options at the time. So I kind of set my heart on really doing this thing from the get-go and trying to find an avenue that would honestly support myself, because I didn't, I wasn't in a fortunate position of having financial support. It's actually a big thing, I feel like, at the moment of conversations in music. I do feel like class is often left out of this. I think there's a lot of amazing topics, being raised at the moment, which are really important, but I haven't seen as much on class, and it was a huge issue. And I still think it is, there aren't that many working class kids getting involved in the creative industry still, to this day. And I think that it's sort of a topic that I, hope to raise a little bit more. And again, I love what you guys are doing to support that cause. So I'm all about that. So no, it was more about, having more of a kind of stable entrance into the music industry. Honestly, I was a bit of a nerd and even sensible back then. I think my parents were the mad creatives, so I had that in me.
I feel that myself. I mean, I've also been working since I was 15, and I started in this industry with internships and what have you. when I was 16, 17 years old, much like yourself. And quite frankly, the only reason I was able to get started is because of a program that offered paid internships. Because otherwise, it's just like, you got to go to work. You know, there's a home here that needs your help.
It's great, and I so love seeing that that's being addressed now in a more meaningful way. But you know, we're talking like 2007, and I just remember these weeks of, you know, work. I was working in the Hawley Arms in London, which is like, you know, the go-to kind of new rave indie bar. It was like Amy Winehouse's hangout, but I worked there till 2-3 in the morning. It was like stacked behind the bar. You know, I'd get the N29 night bus back to Manor House, which is a really sketchy kind of route, and then, you know, get up at 7:30. And I was interning at a very, very embryonic Vice at the time. That was one of my first internships in London, and it wasn't the most pleasant environment to be. So there were definitely moments of like, what am I doing? Like what am I doing? No sleep, you know, running on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And it was hard work. It was really hard work. And I really think it's going in the right direction with mentorships and with, you know, I think there has been a spotlight for sure on interns being paid right now, and it had to happen at some point. You know, I was one of the lucky ones. I had a place to stay in London. You know, a lot of people didn't, particularly here as well. You know, there's not that much kind of support for that. So I'm a big advocate of, you know, more of working class coming into our industry for sure.
I graduated with a mountain of debt from college. And the only reason I was able to get in the music industry is because there was a paid internship at another Planet Entertainment that allowed me to at least, you know, pay rent. But even then, it was still, you know, it's still minimal. You know, I graduated with a college degree and it was still a struggle, but they were like the only company I knew that was paying their interns at the time in the music industry.
But it does change, you know, and it's hopefully only a fairly short period in your life. And I think that, you know, it is work. And this is the big thing, I think, surrounding music now and everything that's going on in culture. I think that you do forget that a lot of work does go into those early parts, and it is a struggle, but I think, you know, it hopefully will pay off. And I do think there's more support out there now, yourselves included, which is a super positive thing. So I don't want to dissuade anybody from giving it a shot, because
you and Sisters of Sound included.
Yeah, totally. Listen, when I was interning at Capitol Records, you know, I remember doing it for a couple of years and then moving to New York and coming back to like see all my friends, and everybody was like, Jean works at a bank. Like, you know, like we haven't seen her in years. And there is this very valuable conversation to be had about how we're paying creatives and how we're paying people that work in the music industry, and like the very often forgotten sort of like underclass and even middle class of this billions and billions of dollar industry. Down to the interns, but also the receptionists and the assistants. And it's just like, this is sort of like an indictment on the United States economy as it stands now. Like, no one should have to work at more than one thing to keep the basics on their table and in their home and in their lives. And I think, you know, especially when you're talking about a creative industry that sort of like feeds all of our souls when we really need it the most, it's kind of shitty, right? So like we do what we can to chip away at it. Fem House does what we can. Sisters of Sound does what you can. Tell me more about SOS and what moved you. Even though this woman is the vice president of A&R for Ninja Tune motherfucking Records. Hello.
The coolest label on the planet.
So she's like, I think I want to do something else. Like, what the fuck?
Speaking of multiple jobs, I mean, yeah, and I'll get to this later, but I'm excited to hear how you balance all of this.
Yeah, the balance is tricky, and I think COVID had quite a lot to do with it, honestly, in terms of freeing up time. So Ninja Tune, for those who don't know, it's sort of one of the longest standing and largest indies to come out of the UK. We have a strong US presence now. We work with a vast array of artists, everybody from Odessa and Bonobo to Little Dragon to Thundercat by Brainfeeder Records. We have a slew of new wonderful signings, including Tisha, Jada G, Park Hai Jin, so it's definitely got its roots in electronic. It was founded by Cold Cut, who were one of the kind of biggest electronic acts to come out of the late 90s, as a way of avoiding major labels. So it's a very independently focused label in its ethos and how we work with artists and collaborate, which is very true to my heart. You know, I'm definitely an independent music girl at heart, always have been. You know, nowadays I do like to work on more commercial stuff as well as the sort of more left field world. But Sisters of Sound was really a reaction to, I've done quite a lot of reflecting, and I know one of the questions coming up was about this, but, you know, in terms of like what allyship and what kind of mentoring means, I think the last few years, particularly as my sort of role has developed at Ninja and it's become a little bit more kind of business focused, I suppose, you know, it's nice to have that real connection to the music and to the artist on a very, very early level. It's something that I've always, you know, I've always been a bit of a digger. I really enjoy finding new talent and supporting it. And I think that as the world has changed, you know, everybody had a lot of time throughout COVID to reflect on what they're doing and the meaning of life and their career. And I think, you know, I have had like long periods of struggle in my world and my job and my career. And I think about it a lot. And I think this is a reaction to that, it's sort of coming to the forefront during this time of deep reflection, essentially. I think, you know, my 20s was spent sort of harboring this very ambitious kind of just single-minded mindset, combined with probably too many going out to clubs and gigs and all of that kind of things. And I didn't really stop until my body almost made me stop as well. You know, I just hit my mid to late 30s, and suddenly it's all like, okay, I need to slow things down a little bit. And it's definitely given me time to just reflect about how, you know, obsessed I was with getting to the top in this career, but actually it's not about that to me anymore. It's about giving back. And I think, you know, in terms of musical communities and where we're at, there's been a lot of noise around that. And it's certainly, you know, something that had been on my mind for a long time. So this is about Sisters of Sound, just to fill you in, sorry, I'll do it quickly, it's a female and non-binary focused electronic label. Our message isn't excluding, it's inclusive. It's about harboring new talent in that field with a focus on females and non-binary folk. We are trying to send a global message as well. It's about the impact of, obviously I'm an expat living in Los Angeles, so it's the impact of independent electronic artists from all over the world on the LA scene, which I think hasn't had that much of a spotlight on it yet, because it's quite sort of embryonic in its kind of where it is. You know, I feel like it's just on the precipice now of having like good clubs in terms of underground electronic music. And Toti, who's another DJ and my best friend and soul sister, I run it with her, and we both share this kind of passion of highlighting that. You know, she spent a lot of time in Barcelona, myself in London. So we really want, you know, it's about highlighting that and championing new artists, you know, from the very, very early get-go, and thinking outside the box a little bit. So that's what it's about. It's a passion project. I think, you know, anybody in the music industry will telling you having a new label right now is like having an expensive hobby. So it's certainly not the breadwinning business right now, but hopefully we'll change that in the future. And it just means a lot to us, the music we're putting out on this, on these compilations that we've been doing so far, and hopefully will lead to a larger platform. So we're very excited about it, and we've had some fantastic press and support from the industry so far. So check it out.
The music is
on Bandcamp.
Music is amazing. Sister Sound on Bandcamp. It's amazing. Do you have I feel like we should, I'll find the link and throw it in there too, in the chat. But Maddy, I wanted to ask, so this is like the point of Backstage Pass is for people to gather information on how they can, you know, live out their dreams in the music industry and their dreams in their life. And so I'm curious how you went from working until 2 a.m. at a club and then waking up at 7:30 for an internship. How did you go from there to being the VP of Ninja Tune and launching your own label and being a DJ and producer?
Yeah, I mean, there's no easy way, and I don't think there's any set way in this industry. I think there's a few kind of tips, and I've written a few articles recently on, you know, particularly with regards to A&R as well. And it's something I get asked a lot, because typically, you know, there won't be jobs advertised for A&R. So just kind of on the basis, what A&R means is essentially scouting for artists, signing them, and then developing them and, you know, growing them. So it's kind of quite a strange part of the industry, and it's not something essentially that you can kind of necessarily interview for and apply for. I mean, that is happening more now actually, but there's a few kind of tips that I would give specifically for A&R. I actually came in through a marketing route, so I was a product manager at record labels before and went up in the ranks of marketing. And then because Ninja Tune was quite an inclusive sort of family label, and it was still growing when I first joined there in, I think, 2009, and then I've done little stints at major labels and Red Bull and other corporations since, but it's always been my family and home and somewhere I've come back to. And I was sort of, you know, just inevitably involved in some of the signings, so I kind of came in a strange route into A&R. But there are definitely some things that, you know, I think really help, and it's honestly about doing as much as you can yourself. It's about really, it's hard for self-deprecating Brits, but, you know, building a brand for yourself and what you stand for and what you're about. So if you're, you know, if you're thinking to yourself, oh, you know, I really want to put a party on for this band, or I love this guy's music, like, what do I do? I'm like, go and do it yourself, go and throw a party, or start a podcast, or do a mix by yourself. You know, it's very easy to find like cheap programs or free programs on any kind of laptop now to do that stuff. We're at this fortunate position at the moment where we have technology at our fingertips, and we have a way of connecting with people at our fingertips. And, you know, there's obviously a lot of kind of double-edged sword situation with social media, but I do think in terms of an A&R standpoint, it's really about presenting yourself as a bit of a brand to these companies, right? And to, you know, they will want to kind of feel confident in what you can kind of contribute yourself. Like, what's your kind of flavor? What's your signature? So I think, you know, trust your tastes and build on that. And I think trying to connect with people, reaching out. I found since moving to the States that, you know, everybody is very, very happy to take meetings with you. So just be a little bit, you know, brave and reach out. And obviously some people will kind of say no, but you will get through to some people eventually. And if you're kind of committed enough, then hopefully that's a sort of way to permeate a little bit. But I don't think anybody's going to sort of, I think it's not about sitting back so much. I think, you know, it's the same with a musician, with artists now. They're expected to do a lot more themselves because they can. They have access to connecting with fans directly, and they have the ability to make, you know, high quality music at home. So it's almost the same in A&R. It's about, you know, becoming a little bit of a figurehead, you know, and that's not necessarily the way I got into it because it was a little bit different back in the day, but I would really encourage that for for people trying to kind of get into A&R. Put on parties, throw parties, do radio shows, do podcasts, do even like reels on Instagram, whatever it is, you know, rating the music that you love, and just get your personality out there.
You know, Lauren and I, Hermixalot and I met by throwing parties in San Francisco, disco queer parties. So the building blocks of every good foundation are parties.
It's true.
And now they're possible again, which is, you know, well, theory, which is great. That's the same. I threw a new rave party in 2008 called, it had an awful name. Actually, I'm not even going to say the name because I'm so embarrassed by it.
We have a better name story. We have a better name story. I guarantee it.
Say it. We can't even say it here. We'll offline about it. But
I'm gonna sidebar this. Actually, we threw a party in San Francisco called ISIS, and it was right before the terrorist group sort of took over, and it was named after the Egyptian goddess, and our slogan was, "I am ISIS, you are ISIS, we are ISIS." So the party like really started taking off. We had some like amazing underground artists through at Public Works in San Francisco. And then Facebook, which was like our biggest platform at the time for advertising the shows, shut us down because only Middle Eastern names started joining. And we had to stop doing the party called ISIS.
I just want to say shout out to the chat right now because I just saw like a collective like, oh, fuck, yeah, from the audience. So thanks for your sympathy, guys.
There aren't future repercussions of this conversation. We were all quite naive back then. I think learning is definitely part of the story as well. And I will say that that's reflective now of what we're doing in our community. I'm learning new language, learning from everybody out there right now through SOS. And I think that it's important to to be very proactive in that world, and
Yeah.
and you know, again, not rest on your laurels with it, for sure.
And also to the audience, I have now at this point worked with quite a few A&Rs in the industry, and I've had the honor of working with Maddy. We are doing a remix coming out soon that I'm very excited about. And she is one of the best, and her notes are remarkable. And not that you need to be a producer to give really good notes, but Maddy, you are also a producer and a DJ. And how do you, first of all, how do you have time for both? How do you do that? And also, how has one informed the other?
I mean, I don't really have time to do both, if I'm honest. I think that I'm a very part-time producer. I do it as a passion project. I started making music for myself. I taught myself Logic about 10 years ago. And I used to sing, and I played cello growing up. So I used to just do more kind of pop focused things. And then when I got, further up in dance music, it just sort of took over. And yeah, I've been releasing some stuff for fun, just a few tracks, and I've got an EP coming early next year as well via All My Thoughts, which is Seb Wildblood's label, who's an amazing producer, and the label's incredible. I DJ as well. I love DJing. It's something, again, I learned a little later. I was producing before I was DJing, which is interesting because it's the other way around. I just think that it stems from a genuine passion for it. I love making music. I love listening to music. I think LP, you and I had a conversation recently about kind of growing up and what that felt like being, I was sort of seeing all these male DJs and being around them. And instead of sort of idolizing them, I was always from the get-go, I was like, I want to do that. I don't want to watch this and kind of fangirl. I want to do this. I want to be part of this. So I think that's where it came from originally. And I think, the artist thing is obviously, it's amazing. And I love how accessible it is to make music and to promote your own music now. I think it's fantastic. For me, I was always interested more in the business side of things. And again, it stemmed from a more need for sort of security and just wanted to bring in my academia with what I was doing, right? So I think that's where it came from. But now, now I have this role and I love it, and it's a hobby for me, and I think it keeps me relevant. I'm going to slightly less shows and parties than I was, just for my physical and mental health more than anything. So, doing radio mixes, we've got a show on Worldwide FM, a monthly show, which is an incredible station, and Dub Lab based in LA as well. We have kind of, not necessarily a residency, but we play on there a lot. So it really keeps me current in a way. I think, selecting is just a great way of sort of contributing to A&R. So it definitely feels like it all feeds into the A&R role. And the producing, I just love to do it. It's just a little bedroom hobby of mine, really. I'm trying to think of an artist, like one track a year. Who am I? Oh, I can't think. Peggy Goo or something, I don't know. Yeah. So prolific isn't my...
Peggy Goo.
Not Peggy Goo. Yeah, but it's hard, and I think that time management is a massive thing. I'm not great at it, I will be honest. I need more structure and creating more boundaries, and I think it's really, really important to do that, particularly in the music industry. When you first get into it, it's all very blurred and it takes a lot of learning, and it took me far too long to get a handle on boundaries just in general. And I think Sisters of Sound and SOS is a bit of a reaction to that as well.
So I want to just go back real quick. You're an A&R, you've got this label, you've got this radio show, your hand is in all these things. And I mean, when we think of gatekeepers in our industry, we're thinking of you, and you're not a traditional gatekeeper, right? And I think gatekeeper has become justifiably a sort of dirty word, because I'm always thinking of some white dude that only lets his friends in, which is, part and parcel of why we started this organization, and I'm sure why you started Sisters of Sound, is to sort of challenge that notion, or at the very least become new gatekeepers or build a new gate, right? With this great responsibility, how do you sort of negotiate being inclusive and sort of shifting mindsets around who's cool enough to come in what a certain sort of DJ should look like, what a certain genre of music should be like, et cetera, et cetera?
That's a really interesting question. I think one thing that I love about the industry right now, and what's been going on with streaming and just how the industry's changed, is that genuinely, hand on my heart, there's just not really any nepotism in A&R anymore. If you are an artist that are connecting with people through your music, A&Rs will find you. It's just the way it is. It's I think the old my friend's band have got a record and sending it to me, it's that, again, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that I think labels in particular expect a lot more from artists now. They expect them to be a little bit more developed, so in a way there might be a slight less of a risk factor. I think rarely do A&Rs take risks unless the music is just undeniably good. But I like to think if I find something that has no followers, that has not seen the light of day, but it's just undeniably good, then we would sign it. I think there's no rules. But one thing that is fantastic is if you're an artist out there, connecting with people on an emotional level and building a community around you, then you will get found. It's as simple as that. Every single artist that we've signed or looked to sign in the last few years that were really doing something game changing have been doing that. So I think it's really about, if you're an artist and you want to be signed or looking to be signed, you really need to be thinking about connecting with real people, not impressing an A&R or a label. It's not about that. It's about fan bases and is your music touching people? Is it good enough, and is it connecting with people? On the kind of diversity tip, one thing that's been incredible about Ninja and what we've been doing is, we do have one of the most diverse rosters out there at the minute, but it's not been that much of a challenge. There's just amazing artists that happen to be women, that happen to be, non-white folks out there. And we've been doing this a lot longer than a lot of labels. It's definitely some transparency in, the cultural conversations versus the sort of change in some labels' outlook. But I think, we have 75% staff in the Ninja Tune North American office are women. On our A&R team, I think 75% again, or maybe slightly less, are women. So it's just, it's the diversity extends beyond the artist into the staff, and I think that's an important part as well. And I just love working with all of the amazing women. It's the best. So yeah, there's responsibility, and I think SOS again is a bit of a reaction to that. It's very, very important that we kind of champion these talents early on in their careers as well. And it's something, as Ninja's grown, I get to do slightly less because we are working with just slightly bigger artists in general. So it's a response to what it was like in electronic music probably when I first started at 22, and it was, I was the only woman in the office putting out mostly white men records, and undergoing quite a few years of lack of confidence in my tastes, probably harbored by my colleagues to some degree, who were a little bit baffled by a very kind of quirky blonde girl with loads of bad eye makeup coming into the office at 22 years old, potentially being a bit threatened now with hindsight. I don't know, but it affected me for a long time. And I will say one thing that I do regret, to go back to your question actually, is I regret not having more confidence in myself at that age. I lost years to that. I would say if anybody's looking to get into it, just trust your abilities and trust your sense with this stuff, because I didn't for a very long time, and it took me the best part of a decade to get over that, particularly when it came to A&R. A&R's still underrepresented, and it's wild, the stats in terms of how little senior A&Rs that are women for whatever reason, because it was just a traditionally dominated, male dominated area. And I think there's this inherent lack of confidence in women's musical taste. It gets deeper than that. I feel like a lot of going back to the boundary stuff, and I think at the time, male artists also just didn't trust me as like the head you know, I'd be in these meetings and they just wouldn't think that I had as much knowledge about how to make them big than the men in the room. And that still happens today. And it's just part of, you know, the narrative, and you deal with it. But yeah, I really encourage everybody just to trust in their abilities, to get on with it, and don't let people knock you. And I think, again, the climate is changing, which I'm just so excited about.
So that's a perfect segue to my final question that I ask everyone. It's my favorite question to ask anyone. You're sitting down with your younger self, 15-year-old Maddy, apparently wearing way too much eye makeup. What do you say?
Blue eyeshadow, probably. Rimmel, a lot of Rimmel lipstick, coffee shimmer. Yeah, I think that was
awful.
it. I think that just if you want to make music, or if you want to get into the music industry, you can do it. Like, having the drive is half of the battle. It really, really is. Just trust in yourself, trust in your abilities. I think I will say there's a balance with that, between having a sense of what's going on is good in the industry, and just sort of being aware of not necessarily it being impacted on you, but new artists. I think another falling block can be when they're just not really in tune with who their audience might be and how to get to them. And I think that that's a really important thing, on top of, you know, it's a fine line between balancing confidence in yourself and also having some awareness. I think for me, I didn't have enough confidence and I had too much awareness. So I think finding that balance, it's a tricky thing to do, but just go for it. Honestly, drive is most of the battle. I've seen so many artists fail on the basis of self-worth and not trusting themselves. And it really, really is as simple as, you know, trying to overcome that hurdle, and you give yourself just incredibly higher stats on high chances on success, essentially. And it's definitely something that's now more available to people. At the time when I started, it certainly was. So for baby Maddy, that's what I would have done, for sure.
Maddy, thank you. Your insight is invaluable. It's been such a pleasure to get to sort of know more about you. We are so thankful for your support and your advice, and the way you so endlessly and freely offer us resources, and for everything that you're doing in the industry to sort of like shift the paradigm. We stand in solidarity with you. FemHouse fam, Maddy motherfucking Salvage.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope it was of some use, my knowledge.
You have a lot of it, Maddy. If anybody has any questions, you can throw them in the Q&A, which is the little bubble like on the bottom of your screen next to the chat. You can throw them in the chat if that's easier. Honestly, I'm monitoring both. And while we wait for any questions to come in, I'm going to kick off with a question. I don't know if Little Boots has tuned in. She said that she was going to try. So I'm going to start with Little Boots. Changed my life. At the beginning of the pandemic, we wrote a track together. That's launched my career. And you two are very good friends, correct?
We are. We actually lived together for a long time.
How did you meet?
We met through. How did we meet? We got introduced. It's like a Brits in music in LA thing. Both came out of both heartbroken, moved to LA at the same time to pursue our dreams. I actually found her incredibly annoying when I first met her. I thought she talked far too much about herself. For the first few times, she actually turned up and met me when I was on a date, in fact, a first date. And that's how we first met, and then spent a bit more time with her. She sort of hung around more and just bugged me more, and then we kind of fell in love in a beautiful kind of sisterly way. And I'm very deeply fond of that girl. Also a fantastic songwriter and a top line writer.
Unbelievable.
She really is. And now she's in ABBA, so that's casual. She's just joined ABBA.
What?
Yeah, she's in ABBA Voyage. She's playing keys and backing vocals. So it's quite wild because, even on the years that we lived together, she'd be out on the piano waking me up at 8 a.m. doing ABBA renditions, and now she's in the band. So yeah.
That is
hot off the press, that is.
That's a dream. Wow. Also, your story sounds a lot like Lauren and my story, where you are definitely Lauren and I am definitely Little Boots. Bugged her enough until she just had to become my friend.
She still follows me around and just talks to me.
Yeah, amazing. I also see that Lottie is, or Lottie, your co-pilot. How do you pronounce
Yes, Lottie, DJ, amazing DJ, amazing radio show
here, which
host.
pumps me up.
Yes, she
Obviously,
really is. She really is. You know, I'm not taking credit for Sisters Down. It's 100% 50-50 collaboration, and she's the yin to my yang, an amazing selector, an amazing DJ, and just knows everyone in LA and brings the vibes and brings life to the project.
You know everybody in LA. That you guys,
I know everybody I know in LA is through Lottie. No. She's great, and we met through Little Boots, so it's a little trio of us.
Amazing.
We had a text chain going for many years called Peachy, which was just a sort of ongoing verbal diarrhea of what's going on in our heads. And
I love
time together. Lottie would tour manage Little Boots occasionally, and we'd all hang out. And we met and again fell in love through that. And she's my best mate and partner in crime, and it's a pleasure running a label with her. We fight like cats and dogs, but you know,
I get that. That's how you get it all out. I love that. Yeah, exactly. We have another question. Best advice for those about to graduate, making the transition from the internship world to landing a concrete job in the music industry.
Yeah, so I think this is single-handedly the hardest thing you will ever have to do in your career, but it will happen. Keep the faith, definitely. Do things yourself. So Lottie, I'm going to use you as an example. She had the difficulty of not having papers and changing career from fashion into music when she was a bit older as well. She, again, couldn't work out here, started volunteering at Dub Lab and just worked there, made an impact there, was DJing around, you know, cash in hand. And then she landed this job at Dub Lab, and she's destroyed it. She's changed the station around. It's amazing now. It is about being persistent, and it's really hard. I remember those days, and I think now people are willing to take more of a chance. I think it's just about being proactive. You know, ask for coffee dates with everybody. Just do it. You know, the worst thing that people will say is no, thank you, but no. You know, it just is about being relentless and a bit annoying, I think, in a sort of finding that balance. But it's really hard. I worked my ass off to get my first job, and I ended up interviewing for a job. I was the last one in the interview. You know, it was like a lot of people, and I got the job because I was reading notes, because I'd written all these meticulous nerdy notes before, and the one CEO, who's like my best friend now and still my boss, saw it, and he was like, she's got notes, this is a good sign. Little things like that, being prepared, being organized, all that stuff. Do not also underestimate how being very nerdy and organized in the music industry is actually a fantastic thing still. It's not all rock and roll and kind of charisma and energy. It's about, like, you know, a lot of my job is sitting on the internet looking at stats, and it's you know, it's not all glamour. So it's about really kind of just being persistent again and believing that you will get there. Manifesting, should we throw that out there? Manifesting.
Absolutely. I just to piggyback off of that, I got my very first job in the music industry by writing a letter as to why the company I wanted to work for was Another Planet. I found out their office was down the street from my apartment, which I felt like was the beginning of my manifestation. And I figured out who the CEO was by a quick Google, wrote a letter to him as to why he should hire me. I walked down to the office, I rang the bell, and I pretended like I had a meeting with the CEO. And I was so confident that they let me in. And then they saw that I was a 19-year-old girl, and they're like, he's busy. But luckily, because of the universe, he walked out of his office right then. And so I walked up to him and I handed him the letter, and I said, I don't have a job here, but I deserve one. And here's this letter as to why. And he was like, I don't know if I should call the police or if I should read this. And I was like, your call. And he read it. And that was my first job in the music industry, which right now sounds actually insane. But, you know, fake it till you make it, have a little bit of confidence, and like somebody will say yes to your coffee date.
Yeah. And then, you know, there's also just check out the support. As you know, it was a different world then. I do think there's a lot of kind of, you know, workshops and platforms that will help you. you know, get into the industry now, particularly if you're in less fortunate positions. I think, you know, we should put a list together of those and maybe help share them. But I think there are a lot of resources out there, so do your homework with that stuff as well.
Yep.
And yeah, but it's hard. There's no way about it. Every industry is hard.
That also means that there's 1,000 ways to do it. There's no one way, you know. I think there's many, many, many. And I think, you know, coming to as many backstage passes as you can, everybody's story is totally different. There's no blueprint, which sounds maybe terrifying, but actually I think means that there's a lot of different kinds of opportunities, which is really exciting.
And if anybody ever wants to get in touch with me and ask about this, because I have done this before, DM me on Instagram and we can WhatsApp, and I will answer your questions. I live for this stuff, and I've been doing it with a few different people who were desperate to get into A&R, and I'll do my best to help. I might not respond that quickly, but I will respond.
That's awesome.
So please,
Thank you,
feel
Maddy.
free. Yeah.
Thank you. If there aren't any more questions, I think we can wrap this up. We dropped Sisters of Sound info in the chat, so make sure that you can grab that. Maddy, I continue to be a massive fan. I love everything you're doing. I love your personality. I love your sparkle. I love the things that you're involved in and why you do them. So thank you so much for being part of this FemHouse community.
Thank you so much. And someone's just asked what my Insta is. It's just it's Maddy, Maddy, Maya, Maia, and I check my like non-follow DMs. So yeah, feel free, and we can WhatsApp.
And don't panic, guys. We are recording this, and it will be on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere you need it, so we can refer to it often. We'll probably put some very fancy graphics on it with everyone's ats and information.
I was really impressed with your graphics. They were very, very fancy.
Shout out to Sosa, who's got her camera off right now, but she quite literally is the impetus to all that we do, because me and Mel are usually like, what time is it?
I just put the correct spelling in the chat because you spelt it wrong, LP.
Oh my gosh, I'm the world's worst speller. Why did I have that job? MADDYMAI or
MAIA? Yeah, that's it, exactly. And Sisters of Sound is the labels one. Check it out, and also check us out. Check out our music. I think, you know, there's some really amazing new artists in there, and we're trying to build more of a community with this stuff. So yeah, can't wait for you guys to check it out and listen.
Awesome.
Maddy, we're so grateful for you. It's been such a blast.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'll come back anytime.
Wonderful. Thanks, FemHouse fam. This has been Backstage Pass. I'm Hermixalot. That's my one-hit quitter, LP Giobbi. And this is our mom, Maddy Salvage. Peace.
Thank you, guys. Much love.